A crowded street, a gunshot cracks the air. 3 people see the killer sprint away. A 4th swears they recognize his face. Police recover the weapon, find fingerprints, even get a tip naming the shooter. This isn't a whodunit. It's a we know who did it. But here's where the story twists. 51 years later, that killer has never stood trial. No arrests, no justice, just a case file stamped cold, and a family forever staring at a door that never opens. William Battles didn't just die, he vanished from the headlines, buried under a mountain of unanswered questions. Why? Was it a corrupt detective? A powerful family silencing the truth? Or something darker, a conspiracy so deep, even the evidence refused to talk? Tonight, we're reopening a case that should have been solved in days, but has haunted a town for generations. And we're asking the one question that terrifies everyone who knows the truth. Why does nobody want justice for William Battles? William Battles wasn't a headline. He wasn't a case number. He was a man who laughed so loud it made his little sister roll her eyes. A mechanic who fixed neighbors' cars for free, even when his own bills piled up. A guy who'd sit on his porch every Sunday, strumming a guitar with 2 missing strings, waving at kids biking past. His friends called him Wild Bill. Not because he was reckless, but because he'd chase storms just to feel the rain. That's who he was, until September 18th, 1973, that day. William left work early. His boss would later say he seemed nervous, glancing over his shoulder. By sunset, he was lying in a ditch off Highway 22, bleeding out from 3 bullet wounds. The police report called it a homicide. His family called it a theft, the theft of a brother who taught them how to fish, a son who mailed his mom roses on her birthday, a man who deserved to grow old. But here's what the file won't tell you. The real crime isn't just that William died. It's that the world moved on. His favorite diner closed. The guitar rotted in an attic. And the storm chaser became a footnote in someone else's secret. Until tonight, September 18th, 1973, 6:47 p.m. The call came in as a disturbance near the old train yard off Highway 22. When officers arrived, they found William Battles slumped against a rusted chain-link fence. His white shirt soaked crimson. 3 shell casings glittered in the dirt beside him. A blood-stained denim jacket, too small to be William's, was tangled in the weeds nearby. And here's the kicker. This wasn't some isolated back road. It was a Tuesday evening. People were there. A waitress smoking behind the diner saw a man in a black baseball cap running toward a pickup truck. A trucker idling at the stoplight swore he heard the shots pop, 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 and watched the killer peel out, tires screeching. And then there was Mrs. Evelyn Thompson, 72 years old, watering her roses across the street. She told police she'd seen William arguing with a rough-looking fella in that same denim jacket just an hour before. Looked like they was fighting over something he pulled out of his pocket. She said, "A photograph? A wallet? Drugs?" She couldn't say, but she'd know that man's face anywhere. By midnight, detectives had a name, Carl Redmercer, a local enforcer with a rap sheet longer than Highway 22, assault, armed robbery, suspected in 2 arsons. Rumor was, he'd been leaning on William for weeks. Why? Maybe over a debt. Maybe over a woman. Maybe just because Red didn't like the way William laughed too loud at the pool hall. Whatever the reason, the puzzle pieces were there. Motive, opportunity, a witness lineup ready to point at Red's mugshot. But then nothing. The denim jacket? Lost by the evidence clerk. Mrs. Thompson changed her story 6 months later, claiming her eyesight was too poor to ID anyone. The shell casings? Ballistics matched a gun found in a river 2 years later. By then, Red Mercer had skipped town. Not that the cops looked hard. In fact, the lead detective retired abruptly in '75, moved to Florida, and never spoke about the case again. And the kicker? Red Mercer wasn't the only suspect. There was also Frank Doyle, William's former boss at the auto shop. The two had fought over a missing toolbox the week before. A toolbox full of expensive tools. Tools that showed up in Frank's garage 3 days after the murder. When police questioned him, Frank just smirked. "Prove it," he said. They couldn't. And then there's the third man, the ghost. A drifter named Henry Moss, who'd been squatting in the train yard. Henry told a bartender he'd seen the whole thing, and that the killer wasn't no local. But when detectives tracked Henry down, he was gone, vanished. No social security trail. No family, like he never existed. 3 suspects. 3 dead ends. But here's what keeps me up at night. This wasn't a hard case. The witnesses were credible. The evidence was fresh. The suspects weren't masterminds. They were small-town tough guys who left trails of beer cans and bar tabs everywhere they went. This should have been solved in a week. So why wasn't it? Let's play this out. Say Red Mercer did it. Maybe he pulled the trigger, but someone else paid him. Someone who didn't want their name in a police report. Someone who made evidence disappear and witnesses forget. Or maybe Frank Doyle set it up, stole those tools to bait William into a confrontation, then hired Red to finish the job. A sloppy frame-up, but effective when the cops won't dig deeper. Or Henry Moss, the drifter, was the patsy, a convenient scapegoat who evaporated before he could contradict the official story. But here's the truth. It doesn't matter who pulled the trigger if the system refuses to care. Because William Battles didn't just die from 3 bullets. He died because evidence goes missing when money changes hands. He died because rough-looking fellas get protected by rougher secrets. He died because justice isn't for mechanics who fix cars for free or storm chasers who laugh too loud. And 51 years later, the crime scene is still right here, in the silence of a town that knows more than it says. In a case file gathering dust. In a family's last plea for answers before the grave takes them too. William Battles' murder isn't unsolved. It's unseen. And that's the coldest truth of all. Because justice delayed isn't just justice denied, it's justice stolen. And in William Battles' case, 3 men walked away scot-free while his family begged for answers. Let's start with the one everyone talked about, Carl Red Mercer. Red wasn't a ghost. He wasn't some drifter. He was a known asterisk thug, 6 feet tall, fiery red hair, and a temper that left bar stools splintered and jaws broken. His record? Assault, theft, suspicion of arson. And according to half the town, Red had been threatening William for weeks. Why? Because William owed him $200. Or because Red's girlfriend kept smiling at William at the diner. Or maybe just because Red liked the sound of a trigger click. Here's the kicker. Red wasn't shy. 2 days after the murder, he walked into Benny's tavern, slammed a whiskey, and told the bartender, "Ain't no jail gonna hold me." The bartender swore it under oath. But when detectives hauled Red in, he just grinned. "Prove it," he said, and they couldn't, because the denim jacket with his initials stitched inside? Gone. The witness who saw him fleeing? Mistaken. The shell casings? Inconclusive. Red walked, and 3 months later, he was working security for a state senator's re-election campaign. Coincidence? Or a reward for silence? Then there's suspect number 2, Frank Doyle, William's boss at the auto shop, the man who fired him a week before the murder over a missing toolbox. The same toolbox that magically reappeared in Frank's garage, stained with William's blood. Frank claimed William framed him, but here's what he couldn't explain. Why his alibi was his wife, who'd filed for divorce the day before. Why his truck was spotted near the train yard that night. And why he suddenly sold his shop and bought a lakeside cabin 2 months after the murder. When the new detective asked Frank about it in 1998, he slammed the door and said, "You're 25 years too late." But the most chilling name isn't Red or Frank. It's Henry Moss, the drifter, the ghost, the man who told anyone who'd listen that he'd seen the whole thing. Henry described the killer in detail, right down to the chipped tooth and snake tattoo on his wrist. But when police finally tracked him to a flophouse in Memphis, he was gone. No forwarding address, no social security number, no record he ever existed. Was Henry Moss even his real name? Or was he a pawn, planted to muddy the waters? 3 suspects, 3 lies, 3 reasons this town still sleeps with its doors locked. But here's the truth they don't want you to hear. These men weren't masterminds. Red couldn't spell forensic. Frank's hands shook when he lied. Henry, if he was a pro, he wouldn't have talked to a bartender. No, the real crime isn't that they got away. It's that letting them get away was so easy. Think about it. Red Mercer had friends in City Hall. Frank Doyle's cousin was the DA's golf buddy. And Henry Moss? The more you dig, the more he looks like a smokescreen. A story invented to give detectives an excuse to shrug and say, "Hey, we tried." But the biggest question isn't, who killed William Battles? It's who let them, who lost the jacket, who scared the witnesses, who looked at a grieving mother and said, "Let it go?" Because here's the thing about small towns. Everyone knows. The bartender knows. The old lady watering her roses knows. The cop who retired to Florida? He definitely knows. But 51 years later, the only thing louder than the truth is the silence around it. So let's say their names again. Carl Red Mercer, Frank Doyle, Henry Moss. Say them out loud. Let them sit in the air. Let them burn. Because William Battles doesn't get to be forgotten. And these men don't get to hide behind whispers anymore. Let's cut through the noise. William Battles' case isn't a mystery. It's a choice. A choice to look away. A choice to let 3 bullets erase a man's life. But why? Why would cops, judges, neighbors, people sworn to protect, let this happen? Let's break it down. Theory 1, the killer had power. Not the kind of power that comes from muscles or money. The kind that comes from secrets. Red Mercer wasn't just a thug. He was a weapon. And weapons don't fire themselves. Someone aimed him. Maybe it was the state senator who hired Red as security after the murder. Maybe it was the DA's office, who suddenly stopped returning calls about the bloodstained toolbox. Or maybe it was the old sheriff, who retired to a beachfront condo 6 months after closing the case. Power doesn't pull triggers. It pays off witnesses. It loses evidence. It makes a small-town murder disappear like smoke. Theory 2, the truth would have burned everything. William's murder wasn't just about William. What if solving it meant exposing something bigger? A drug ring funneling cash through the auto shop. A corrupt union boss using Frank Doyle's garage to launder money. Or worse, a cop on the take. Someone with a badge who couldn't afford a mechanic like William asking too many questions. Think about it. The shell casings vanished. Henry Moss evaporated. Even the weather report from that night conveniently disappeared. That's not sloppy police work. That's a controlled burn. Theory 3, William Battles didn't matter. The ugliest theory is the simplest. Maybe William wasn't important enough. No fancy pedigree. No political connections. Just a mechanic who fixed cars for free and chased thunderstorms for fun. Cops solve murders for mayors' sons. They solve them for CEOs' daughters. But a guy like William? Easy to ignore. Cheaper to forget. And when his sister called every week for updates, they'd say, "We're working on it," while his file collected dust in a storage room. But here's the twist. These theories aren't separate. They're layers of the same rot. Power protects itself. Secrets demand silence. And apathy? It's the oxygen that lets corruption breathe. Let's play this out. Suppose Red Mercer pulled the trigger. But Red's just a dog on a chain. Who let him off the leash? Who made sure the chain link fence where William died got torn down a month later? Who pressured Mrs. Thompson to forget the face she swore she'd never forget? Or take Frank Doyle, a man too sloppy to hide a bloody toolbox, too arrogant to ditch the truck seen near the crime scene. Yet he retires rich, while William's family eats casseroles at a funeral that never ends. How? Because the system isn't broken. It's rigged. Rigged to protect men who know where the bodies are buried, even when they're the ones holding the shovels. And Henry Moss, the ghost suspect. The perfect distraction. A story so flimsy, it's almost insulting. But that's the point. Give detectives a dead end to chase, and they'll stop asking why the road was built that way. Asterisk, so here's the truth they're praying you'll ignore. William's case isn't cold because it's complicated. It's cold because someone turned off the heat, because solving it would have cost too much money, reputations, maybe even lives. But here's what they didn't count on you. The person listening right now. The one who's asking, how is this possible? The one who's realizing that unsolved doesn't mean unknowable. It means unspoken. 51 years later, the walls are cracking. The bartender who heard Red's confession? He's dying to clear his conscience. The rookie cop who found the lost case file? He's got a daughter William's age now. And the DNA on that denim jacket? Technology's catching up. The question isn't why did justice fail? It's who's still afraid of the truth. Maybe it's the senator, now long dead, whose family still runs this town. Maybe it's the old sheriff's kids, inheriting that beachfront condo and the guilt that comes with it. Or maybe it's the quiet neighbor who still hears those 3 gunshots every night, but swore to take what he saw to the grave. William Battles didn't just die in 1973. He was buried by lies, by greed, by the cowardice of people who chose silence over salvation. But graves can be dug up. And secrets? They don't stay secret forever. So let's end with this. What if the answer's been here all along? Sitting in a drawer, whispered in a bar, hidden in a basement. What if all it takes is one person, to say, enough? William's family is still waiting. And time's running out. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Some wounds fester. 51 years later, William Battles' sister still calls the police station every December, on his birthday, to ask if there's news. His mother died in 1991. Her last words, "Find the man who killed my boy." His niece, born 2 years after the murder, keeps a voicemail from a detective who promised her, "We're close." That was 2007. The detective retired in 2008. But here's the thing about truth. It's patient. It's waiting in a dusty attic box, tucked under a stack of love letters no one's opened since '73. It's buried in the guilt of a drunk old man who mutters, "I should have said something," before passing out on his couch. It's hiding in you. Maybe your grandpa told a story about a wild guy who crossed the wrong man. Maybe you found a locket in your basement with a photo of a stranger inside. Or maybe you're just someone who can't sleep knowing a killer's still out there, laughing. In 2019, a rookie detective reopened the case. Fresh eyes, new tech. They ran the DNA from that bloodstained jacket. Finally, they tracked down Red Mercer's ex-girlfriend, now a grandmother in Arizona. They even dug up Frank Doyle's lakeside cabin, searching for the missing toolbox. But guess what happened? The DNA results got lost in the system. The ex-girlfriend couldn't recall. And Frank Doyle? He died in 2015, taking whatever he knew to a grave with no headstone. Same walls, same lies, same silence. But silence cracks. Last year, a TikTok video about William's case went viral. Strangers flooded the police tip line. A retired nurse in Ohio swore her late husband once drunkenly confessed, "I helped cover up a murder in '73. A high school teacher found a diary in a thrift store. Page 1 reads, "I saw Red Mercer shoot that man." And William's nephew, born 20 years after his death, changed his name to William. So they remember. He says, so they know we're still here. This isn't just a cold case. It's a reckoning. Every share, every comment, every time you say William Battles' name out loud, you're peeling back the rot. You're telling the powerful that their secrets have expiration dates. You're telling the guilty that their shadows won't protect them forever. So here's my question. What if the key to solving this isn't in a lab or a police file? What if it's in your hands right now? Maybe you'll pause this video and text your uncle. "Hey, did you ever hear about William Battles?" Maybe you'll forward it to the true crime blogger who cracks cold cases for fun. Or maybe you'll just sit there and wonder. But remember, the Battles family isn't asking for vengeance. They're asking for proof. Proof that William mattered. That his life wasn't just a speed bump on someone else's road to power. That 51 years of screams into the void weren't in vain. So let's turn up the volume. Let's make this story so loud, even the ghosts can't ignore it. William Battles doesn't get to be a footnote anymore. Not as long as we're here. Not as long as we care. Before we end this, I want you to picture something. A Polaroid, faded at the edges. A young man squinting against the sun, one hand shielding his eyes, the other holding a soda bottle mid-laugh. His shirt's untucked. His hair's a mess. This is the only photo of William Battles his sister hasn't burned. The only proof he was here. Alive. Human. Look at his face. Not the crime scene photos, those aren't him. Not the bloodstained jacket or the shell casings. This is William, a man who didn't know he had 3 years left, who didn't know his name would become a riddle no one wants to solve. Asterisk, remember that laugh. Remember the mechanic who fixed cars for single moms and never sent a bill. The storm chaser who dragged his kid sister onto the porch during tornado warnings just to feel alive. Remember that he had a favorite sandwich, roast beef with too much mustard. A favorite song, something by Creedence he'd butcher on that broken guitar. A life. And now, ask yourself this. If William Battles, with his witnesses, his evidence, his name, can vanish into the void of Unsolved, what does that mean for the rest of us? For the girl walking home alone tonight? For the old man who pisses off the wrong neighbor? For you, we like to think justice is a promise, that if we follow the rules, play our part, the system will protect us. But William's case isn't a loophole. It's a warning, a crack in the facade, proof that truth doesn't always win, that sometimes the good guys don't want to be found. So we'll leave you with this. The next time you hear a siren, or read about a cold case, or walk past a rusted chain link fence, think of William. Think of his sister's voice, worn raw from begging. Think of Red Mercer's grin as he ordered another whiskey. Think of the detective who retired to the beach, the jacket that vanished, the witnesses who forgot. And ask yourself, no, demand an answer. Why we call these cases cold when the anger still burns. Why we say unsolved when the answers are right there, screaming in our faces. William Battles died on September 18th, 1973. His case remains open. His killer remains free. And the rest of us? We're left with a choice: look away or stare into the void and say, "Not anymore. Good night."